Lord, to all of my listeners here in the United States of America and around the world. I thank you so much for taking the 2 hours on your Sunday to be a part of this program. I have to share Charlie's program that was just on before this one was very informative and very enlightening about how no one seems to be taking responsibility for a lot of things that are happening and going on. And it's a very, very sad time, not only for our family members there in Uganda, but, around the world as well. It can't always be easy to be outside of the country and sit and listen and hear the things that are going on there inside of the country. I also had an opportunity to catch a little bit of the show on Saturday when the Member of Parliament was a part of that program on Saturday morning. And just elaborating it a little and talking about the bill that had just been passed there, the public management order bill that's there, sitting there now waiting on the president's signature. Accountability is just amazing that there seems to be none. And even within Parliament and listening to that discussion and everything that was going on there, it's like everyone's hands are tied. Everyone's hands are tied except for the president, who seems to be running the country and making the decisions and doing the things that he wants to do with the scrutiny of no one. No one's questioning him. No one's standing up to him as an authority figure saying this isn't right or we can't do this. No one's questioning him at all. When you have a president that has the power of the military, the police, and behind him, or before he ever says a word. We have a caller already this hour. Caller that was coming through, and somehow it got hooked in with our cables, and we got disconnected there. But maybe the caller will try back again later on. But what I was just elaborating on a little bit before we get on the topic of who we're going to be discussing today is just the power that the president seems to think that he has and has to have in order to rule and lead the people. I think the people of Uganda have the president a little uneasy right now, because for him to feel the need to put a bill in place to keep them from congregating and discussing anything political or their views with anything to do with the government is a sign of a government that seems to be threatened by the people. I think that the military and the police force being put in force to really oversee this bill and to kill at will whoever they feel is not complying with that bill, I think the president is putting the power in the wrong hands. If he is the president of Uganda, the power lies in his hands. For him to give that power away to someone else to keep law and order doesn't seem like a man who is capable of running the government anymore. For example, most presidents around the world enjoy the privileges of having that power of running the government and doing the things that need to be done and taken care of, not putting their army, their policemen, or their military, whatever, in charge of law and order for the people. So to this, I say to the Ugandan people to continue to stand up for your rights, continue to stand up and face obstacles that may come your way. The president is threatened by it. If he wasn't threatened by it, he would not feel the need to have this new law put in place. If he wasn't threatened by it, he would not feel the need to send his military out to make law and order, in the streets with the Ugandan people. So I think your voices are being heard, and I think your voices are being heard loud and clear. And I don't think that we should look at some of this as a symbol of suppressing the people back down, because I feel like the Ugandan people are tired, and I feel like they're ready to move forward. The Ugandan citizens have shown this time and time again through different protests and through different things that have come up. And I think the president hears you. I think he hears you loud and clear. And I think he's a little bothered by it all. If it wasn't a threat to him, he would feel no need to do the things and put the things in order that he needs to. Uganda has an election coming up again here in 2016. And it's a little ironic that a lot of these things are happening now and a lot of things are being put in place. Well, even here in the United States of America, there are a lot of broken promises, and there are a lot of promises for change or to make things happen that never come about. Sometimes it's just to get the people excited about what's happening, to rally the people behind you, and to get the people on board to say, yes, these are the things he's going to do for us, so we're going to vote him in. This president has been sitting in office for 28 years. And on every report I look on, anywhere, on any research you do on this president, on the country, the movement forward of the country, and everything that's happening there in Uganda for the last 28 years, there is no accountability for anything. There's no accountability for why there's no jobs in Uganda and why there are, you have almost 80% of the country that's unemployed. There's no accountability for medical, health, food, nutrition, education. There's no accountability for anything. Yet over the last 28 years, this man has gotten billions of dollars from other countries. Over the course of 28 years, he's gotten billions of dollars from other countries to develop the area there in Uganda. But here we look in the 21st century, here we are in 2013, and we cannot see really any of the things that have really made that dramatic of a change in the country. There might have been small changes that have taken place, but not anything dramatic. I say that the Ugandan people are tired because one of the things that social media has given the Ugandan people that they did not have this 28 years ago when the sitting president came into power. But one of the things the Ugandan people have now today is social media, that the information is out there. They can read up on their history. They can read up on their country. They can see what's going on. They can see how things are progressing and moving forward. And Uganda seems to be at a standstill. And the government shows no accountability for anything. It appalls me when you see the military and all the things they have, and the Ugandan people have nothing. Those of you who were able to be a part of the American Connection on Wednesday, we had a guest in-house with us, Kenneth Davis, who actually was one of the first viewers of the video, that's the memorial video that's going to be coming out here shortly. He spoke on his views of that video, his views of the government, his views of the sitting president, what he saw in those videos, how he felt about the people, the suffering, and everything that was taking place there. It was a very, very good interview, which I'm sure Voice of Uganda Radio will play back at some later date. But one of the things, it's interesting to me, I have other interviews that's going to be coming up also on that video. And one of the things that's very interesting to me is the views of the American people when they see this video. Number one, a lot of them had no idea that these things were going on. Number two, a lot of them can't understand how government in today's society, because we're not looking at 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago. This is today's society. They don't understand how this can be happening. And even our media is not informing us and telling us of what's going on. They are very, very surprised at the malnourished and the hospitals and everything that's going on there in Uganda. And yet you have a president who's getting ready to pay out millions of dollars for social media to be, to somehow have wraps on it, to know what people are watching and what people are doing. I say to you, the Ugandan people, do not be intimidated by this government. This government is going to do what it is going to do, regardless of how you approach your situations. You will not be able to change the fact that there will not be any tear gas, or there will not be any killings in the streets, or there will not be harm done to other people because you stay silent and decide not to put your pictures up on your Facebook, and invite Voice of Uganda Radio to be a part of your Facebook so that we can download those pictures onto videos. You're going to have to continue to make your voice heard. It's just like Charlie was saying earlier on his program. The needless deaths have to stop. They have to stop. And if the needless deaths have to stop at the hands of the Ugandan people putting the information out that they need to, then that's what you have to do. Because my friends, my family, I am here to tell you, the government will not go away. It will not leave you alone. You will not have any inner peace because they are threatening to look at your social media. You need to continue to stand up for your rights the only way you know how. And right now, a large majority of Ugandans inside the country have Facebook and have social media. And I know that quite a few of you have friended us here at Voice of Uganda Radio. I'm telling you now, you need to take the pictures and you need to put them out there. We will get the pictures and we will do what we need to do with them on this side of the globe. But the only thing that connects you to us right now is your pictures, uploading them so that we can get them, so that we can let the other side of the world and the rest of the world know what's happening to you there in Uganda. Your government has no accountability for the over 300,000 people that are dying a year. And if they were questioned and if they were asked, I'm sure they would come up with some reasoning as to why these deaths are occurring. When those of you in Uganda and those of you who are in exile outside of Uganda, we know why those deaths are occurring. And we know why these things are happening. Some of the greatest leaders in the world that we've talked about here on Freedom at Hand, some of the greatest leaders, greatest iconic leaders, face their fears and move forward. Uganda has been a country that has been praying for decades. You have been on your knees, you have been in your churches, and you have been praying for decades for the God that we all serve to come in and help you, to rescue you, to move the country forward. And I'm telling you, the time is here and the time is now. And this is not a time to idly lay by and allow the government to threaten you and allow the government to, say they're going to hire these people to get in and do social media so that you can't do your pictures and you can't get things out, because your president can go only so far, and he will cross a line and then the world will be on board, because you cannot shut your people off from social media completely. If he's not going to be accountable to what's happening to you as a family, as a unit there in Uganda, then you're going to have to be responsible for what's happening to you yourselves. And you can't stand by and be intimidated by a government that is not going to do anything to help you. I read up on the last election of this president being voted in, which I don't think he was voted in. Corruption runs very, very deep, and we know that his hand is in the pot when it comes to electoral boards also. Those people are put there in office in favor of him, so they're going to rig and they're going to make everything look like it's in his favor. But what I want to say to the people of Uganda and those listening around the world, any political office that any of us know about that political figures have ran for, whether it's governors, whether it's presidents, whether it's senators, congressmen, parliament, whatever they are, no president or no member of any group has ever won an election by 70%. It is unheard of. It's so unheard of that it's almost laughable. It's almost as laughable as the budget that went to the United Nations for Uganda up to the year 2015. It's laughable because you look at those numbers and you say, what in the world is this? I mean, these are impossible things. And this is what I want those of you listening to my voice today to know, that these are some of the reasons why you know that this government is just going along, feeding the world what it needs to hear and what it wants to hear said, and it's not doing anything and no one's making it accountable. The United Nations has already said that the budget they put out there was a joke. It will not happen, and it will not happen by 2015. You're talking about 2 years away, and they propose something that will take the next 10 to 20 years to accomplish. And yet they continue to think that we're all ignorant and we don't understand what's going on, when in turn we do understand what's going on. And now we're starting to all make our voices heard, not just those of you that are inside of Uganda, but those of us who are outside of the country as well. So in saying those numbers that went for the budget to the United Nations, this is the other part. You cannot tell me that a president last term won the election by 70%. It is unheard of. If you told me he won it by 52 or 55%, I would say, okay, that seems possible, but not by 70%. No election, no one wins by those amount of numbers. You do not have, even President Barack Obama, as much as he is loved in this country, he is not loved at 70%. He only won the election, by a slight margin over his opponent. When the sitting president now goes out into any type of functions to be a part of any type of gatherings, he gets booed. You cannot tell me that this is a man that the country is looking forward to running the country for the next 5 years. So something needs to happen before 2016, my friends and my family and my fellow Ugandans. This man should not be allowed to take power in 2016. He has done nothing for the Ugandan people but caused them heartache and hardship. He has starved them. He has not given them medical treatment. He has not given them proper schooling and education to make sure that these programs are running properly in the country. He has not found jobs for the Ugandans that are there. I don't know any country that would vote back in a man in power who has not done anything at all for the country. Anything at all for the country. It's not what a president does. And no one should continue to sit by idly and allow this to happen. I know that Parliament has their hands tied to a certain degree also, because you have a president here who puts his agenda out there and tells you now vote on it, as if he's telling you to vote on what he wants passed, not on debating the issue, talking about the issue, and figuring out what's going to be best for the people, but only about what's best and what's right for him. Because Parliament, I'm here to tell you, if he's going to monitor the Ugandan people, he's going to monitor you also. This is the problem that we're having. Everybody wants to be safe. Everybody wants to make the right decision, not to step on the president's toes, not to cause any friction or any problems. However, you're not safe. No one is safe in the country as long as he is in power. No one is safe in the country. The military men and the policemen who are shooting down innocent people, who are throwing their authority around at the will of the president, saying you have my permission to do these things, you're not even safe, because the day that you do something against him, or you don't vote, or you don't act in the way in which he perceives that you should, you're just as low on the radar scale as the people that you're shooting and the people that you're killing. And you're shooting and you're killing your own people. You're not shooting and killing. You're not in a war against another country. You're in a war against your own brothers and sisters, and you're shooting and you're killing them so that you can get a paycheck and feed your family and go home and do what you need to do. I tell you, any of the army men and any of the policemen who are listening to me, what if it was your child in the streets, walking innocently wherever they're going, and someone shoots them down with tear gas, or someone shoots in the crowd and kills one of your loved ones? How would you feel? You have to understand that you can't continue to connect yourself apart from the people that you're hurting, because you are a part of the people that you're hurting. You're not separate from them in any way at all. Your government may be on your side today, but it may be against you tomorrow. And then what? You look back at your own life, at all of the lives that you've taken and all the destruction that you've caused, and you see it as being what? Because it will eventually catch up with you, and it will not be a good thing. It will eventually catch up with you. The dead promises are there. This president promises things even outside, through the United Nations and through the World Bank and through other countries, to get monies and fundings for the things that he wants to get, and he's not doing them. And as the world starts to stand up and take notice, so should you there in Uganda. Because we're starting to say that something is very, very wrong here. Something is very wrong. I don't know if those of you were listening to my program last week when I read the email of an article that I sent to Senator Coons, who is a senator here in Delaware in the United States of America, who said that there is an erosion happening in the country of Uganda. Erosion. Those are pretty strong words. And the thing is he can use such strong terms is because he can back it up. He's been there to the country. He's seen what's happened. He's seen that the freedom of liberties and rights of speech, of the media, and of the press has been taken away from the Ugandan citizen. Their natural given right through their constitution, it says they have the right for these things, these freedoms and liberties that are being taken away. I don't know if I would want to run a country where the people did not want me in charge, and that I had to continuously put force out there to get the people to obey and to do what I tell them to do. That is a dictatorship, my friends. No one should have to live in a country like that. And the part of the whole thing that is so hard to understand is that in the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda, the liberties and rights of the people are there. And little by little, the government is changing everything and scrutinizing everything so that it reads, so that it is what he would have it be, for his best interest, not for what is at the best interest of the people. Parliament, I feel very bad for them that they do not have the opportunity to work and serve in office as they were voted in office to do. They need to see the issues, they need to debate the issues and find out why it is right or wrong for the Ugandan people. In America and in any country around the world, no bill can get passed that quickly. No bill gets passed that quickly. Bills go to the floor. They go to the floor. The discussion is open. The debates start, and it can take months and sometimes even years for bills to get passed to a point where they get on the president's desk for him to sign it. And you're telling me we're talking maybe week and a half, 2 weeks tops, and this thing is already on the president's desk to be signed? That is not a country that is working for the people. Nothing is passed that quickly. Everything goes through a process. And this process has missed many, many loopholes and gone straight to the president's desk. By the year 2016, something desperately needs to happen because this man does not need to be in power. And there's no way that you can say that he would be better if given another 5 years to run that country when he's had 28 years to run a country and he's run the country amok. We even have Taylor Cross, who went there and filmed some of the riots and the things going on to bring the information out for the American people. And he was even arrested, and he couldn't even bring his things out to show them. My Ugandan family, I'm here to tell you the fight is probably your own, but you're going to have to stand strong, and you're going to have to stand firm in what it is you want for yourselves, your rights, and what it is you want us as the rest of the world to hear, to see, and to do, and to help you with. I'm sad to say that that video is not running yet. I know that it probably will be running this week, and we're going to put a link on the Voice of Uganda Facebook page when it's out there and running. I have seen it it has been uploaded, and it is ready to go, and hopefully that will start running this week. Just to show you what we know and what we see is happening there, because one of the things I want the Ugandans that are still inside the country to know is that we know a lot more than you think we know. We are aware of a lot more things than you think that we are aware of, and we're fighting on your behalf more so than you know and more so than we can even say. But we need you guys to continue the fight. You cannot allow the government just to step in and take away your rights and your liberties. Do not put yourself in harm's way. But there's a lot of things you can do by uploading pictures, by sending emails, by doing things so that we can let the rest of the world know what's going on and what's happening. If you sit there silently, you will silence us as well. You're inside the gates. You're inside the country. You know what's going on, and you can get those informations and those things out to us. And my fellow Ugandans, you guys have to stand together and you have to help each other. You cannot put someone out there on the front line and leave them out there to stand alone. You have to stand together and you have to stand united. Because if this is the day that you've been praying for, and this is what you're hoping to happen, and these turnarounds to come about, you're going to have to stand firm in your faith and believe that there are people who know what's going on. The world is not as silent as you think it is anymore. Yes, we have been silent before now, but now that our eyes have been opened and we understand and we see what's happening there inside the country, we can no longer be silent. We can no longer be silent. My topic today, it's going to be a shorter one because I really wanted to convey to the Ugandan people with a compassion that I feel very deeply within myself on the need and the struggle to continue on in the good work that you guys have been doing, understanding and knowing that the American people are standing behind you and they understand and they know what is happening over in Uganda. Freedom at Hand, it was put out here as a platform to help the Ugandan people see, embrace, and understand and know that there have been many people before you that have had the same struggle. There have been many people before you that had to put their lives in danger. You see that from Nelson Mandela, you see that from Steve Biko, you see that from Harriet Tubman, a woman who went back and forth into slave country to free slaves out of captivity. Her fears were very, very real. And she had a pathological fear because as a child, she saw people murdered and beaten to death for the very thing that she was doing. So I don't want these stories to just be things that you hear that are just kind of out there to entertain you for 2 hours on a Sunday afternoon. These things are out here to empower you, to show you that there have been people before you that had to stand firm and make decisions in order to be able to continue the move forward. Rosa Parks was the one we did last week with her. And I explained with her because a lot of people only know that she didn't get up and give her seat away on a bus, but they didn't realize that her grandparents were slaves. And that by the time her mother was born, that's when the emancipation was getting ready to be signed into law, that no one could any longer own slaves. And then shortly after that, she was born. So she came through a lot of years of a lot of things. And she was 42 years old before she ever stood up for her rights. But at some point in time, we have to all stand up for our rights. We have to stand up and say that this cannot happen anymore. And I will not idly sit by and allow this to happen, because I promise you, my friends, the government is not going to change because it tries to take away your rights and tries to silence you. It's only going to get worse. You have to be the ones that make the decision. Do we stand up now and fight back? Or do we simply lay down and allow ourselves to just die? And a lot of what I'm asking you to do, uploading pictures, sending emails, letting us know what's going on, that stuff is not going to harm any of you. It's not harming anyone right now. We're not putting you in harm's way. We're not saying go against the bill, stand out in the streets, picket, set up, marches, or do whatever it is you want to do. We understand that there's a certain part of the law that's going to have to be respected. Otherwise, it will be a lot of bloodshed. But our fight on our end, on helping you and on getting the information out, is not going to put anyone in harm's way right now. But these are the pictures and these are the images and these are the things that we need to show around the world so that people understand what's going on. And we're going to encourage everyone when that video gets loaded up, especially when it hits YouTube, to go in there and watch it all the time, because The more it gets hit, the more publicity it gets, and the more the faces get put out there, and the more we can start to have the conversation around the world about what's happening there in your government. There was a time when Uganda stood alone and it had to fight alone, and there was no one there to help you, and there was no one there to guide you and to be a voice of encouragement. But in today's society, it is different, and you have these things now, and we're asking you to participate, take part in, and allow us to help you. We don't want our hands to be tied the way Parliament's hands are tied. We want to be the voice of Uganda. That's why they came up with the radio station Voice of Uganda Radio, because there needs to be a voice and it needs to be heard. And if your president is putting a muffle over your mouth so that you can't make those noises and you can't be heard, well, they can't do that to us. And we want to be that voice that the world hears. Our Freedom at Hand person today is our 16th President of the United States of America, Abraham Lincoln. It's interesting, I think every now and then people ask me, how do I come up with, or how do I choose the people for Freedom at Hand? Because there are so many iconic people and there's so many iconic figures out there. I listen to people, I listen to the other programs, I talk to people, and I can get a feel and a sense for what people are hungry for and what people want to hear just from what's going on around me. The reason I want to talk about our 16th president, who is Abraham Lincoln, is because of what's going on with your president sitting in office right now there in Uganda. Because at some point there needs to be a comparison so you can understand and see what your president should be doing for you that he is not doing for you. Abraham Lincoln, of course, was born in the 1800s. He was born in 1809 and he died in 1865. By most of us, that is a very, very short lifespan because he was 56 years old when he died. He was assassinated just before he was able to take in his second term as president of the United States of America. In history books and anything that talks about the freedom of liberty and rights and justice for the American people, especially the African American people, he comes up with everyone else as an iconic figure. Simply because this was one man who understood and knew that slavery was wrong. That slavery in the United States of America had to be abolished. That it was not right for blacks to be owned and beaten and tortured and killed and the things that were happening to us to happen to us. He stood up for the rights of the people. This is a man who is going to be great to compare to your sitting president now, because if you look at the love that this man had, not for his own people, meaning the whites, but that he had for a society of people who were considered to be slaves, less than animals, less than a dog, but yet he understood and he knew that we had rights to be treated humane. If we look at your sitting president now, we cannot have that same conversation. And the reason we can't have that same conversation is because there is no love for the people. You can't be president for part of the people. You have to be the president for all of the people. And that is what Abraham Lincoln was. He was a president for all of the people, not just some of the people. He understood injustice. He understood freedoms and liberties and rights for all people, not just for some people. And he was willing to fight for that at any cost. This was a man who understood and knew that people were being killed and tortured and dying daily. And that as a president, he had an obligation to do something about that. He had an obligation to step forward and do something about that. Every president that is sitting in office right now has an obligation to its people. not to shut its people down, but to lift and build its people up. And if any president is sitting in office now and is not allowing that to happen and is not doing that, then that is a man or woman that I would say does not deserve to sit in the seat to run a country and to say that they're president of that country and they're for the liberties and the justice and freedom and rights for those people. You can't. And somewhere down the road, the sitting president in Uganda has lost sight of what his purpose was for being in office and being elected in office, and for what it was he should or should not be doing at the present time. The interesting thing about Abraham Lincoln is that he was not he was not a man who hid behind other people. He was a man who stood firmly in what he believed and the social changes that he believed in. And right now, the sitting president in Uganda hides behind his military. That is where his power comes from. His power doesn't come in the changes he's trying to bring about and the people that he's trying to help. His power comes in his military, how they keep law and order in a country that is becoming more and more aggressively alert and aware of what's happening and wanting and fighting for change. President Lincoln, he led the United States of America through its greatest constitutional and military moral crisis, which was the American Civil War. You know, the American Civil War was the core of the fight for freedom for slave states. And he understood and he knew that even though he was president at a time during the American Civil War, that he still had to preserve the Union as well as abolish slavery. So you're still trying to keep the country together. You're still trying to keep the country whole and united. Yet at the same time, you're trying to fight to abolish slavery. And he was asked on several occasions by African Americans, which were called, they were Negroes or back then, but they asked him, what will we do? What will happen to us if slavery is abolished? And he simply said, I don't know. He didn't know what would happen to them, but he knew that it was wrong and that it couldn't carry on. We can go back over to Uganda and say the same thing. What will happen to the country when your sitting president is no longer the sitting president and that power is taken away? We don't know, but it's got to be better than where you're at now and what's happening right now in the society. You cannot continue to live the lives that you're living, because if you ask any American right now, they would consider Ugandans as living in slavery. Because your rights, you have the same rights as we had as slaves, which is very, very limited and means that you don't have rights. You don't have many, many rights that you should have. And even though your Constitution says you have those rights, our Constitution didn't say we had those rights, because at that particular time, when Abraham Lincoln became president, there was nothing written in our Constitution anywhere to preserve, protect the loyalty of blacks at all. But in Uganda, your Constitution says that you do have those things. Yet every time something happens, every time something comes about, your president, little by little by little, is writing those things out of your Constitution. And by writing those things out of your Constitution, he's putting you more and more back into a time of slavery, where you have no rights to own land. And we know that already in a lot of Uganda, and we know a lot of Ugandans who have lost their land to the government. The government comes in, sees, takes, and does whatever they want. That's what happened to us during slavery. Blacks could not own land. In Uganda, you guys are getting to the same point where your land is being taken, confiscated, or you're saying that you cannot own the land. You cannot work the land as you want to. The government has its hand in everything that you do. It's not giving you the freedom to to be entrepreneurs, to grow, to develop, to become stronger, to become something that will help the country move forward, not continue to allow the country to move backwards. So during the time that President Lincoln was fighting to abolish slavery, we did not have some of the rights that you have in Uganda, yet you guys are not allowed to exercise those rights. Because this bill that's just been passed, that's sitting there waiting on the president to sign, is going to be horrific. It is going to be an open day on slavery in Uganda, where you can beat, torture, and kill people. And in most of the world, we thought the days of slavery was over. It's not that the country is poor, malnourished, has no medical, and a lot of the education that needs to be going on there is not happening. It's not that. Slavery is something totally, totally different, where your rights are being taken completely away from you. And you have no rights in a country that you live in that says that you do. It's a very, very sad day when you look at us back in the 1800s, and you look at Uganda in the 21st century here in 2013, and Ugandans are no better off than we were in 1809. 1809, that was a long time ago, and the rest of the world has moved forward, and Uganda is still stuck in the 18th century, under a government and under a ruling that treats them as if they were slaves. The only thing he hasn't done to you is gone to another area and brought you to his country as slaves. He's made you slaves within your own country that you were born in, a country that you love, that you grew up in, that you had hopes and dreams of living and becoming a better society, living and growing and maturing and developing with the rest of the world. But we can right now today take you back into 1800s and say that that is where you're at, according to where your government has you at, as far as the way that it treats the people. You know, one of the things that Abraham Lincoln knew, that by abolishing slavery and freeing the slaves, was that he would somehow strengthen the nation. He would strengthen the government, and he would strengthen the economy. Because the freeing of the slaves meant that you had more people out there that would start to learn, start to grow, start to be educated, start to look and find their niche in the world. They would work, they would pay taxes, they would be a part of the society, and they would help the society to grow. So what worked at one particular time in life, it was not going to work in this particular time in life. And it's the same thing with the Ugandan government. I mean, there have been so many companies, and I know that a lot of the Ugandans, through some of the research that they've done, there have been so many programs that have wanted to come and set up shop there to offer jobs and training to develop the country. Because we all know that a lot of the developing countries loves to go into these smaller countries, educate the people, train the people, put the people to work, because they can hire you at a lesser amount than they would have to pay if you were in some of the more developed countries. Is that wrong? Maybe to a certain degree it is wrong. But the thing about it that is not wrong is that, number one, you would have companies come in with trust that would help build up the country, that would help move the country forward, that would put people to work, and the jobs that you would have would be better than the jobs you have at present. If the government was running in the way that it should, he could tax the people, he could tax your payrolls, and that would be money that would flood into the economy to help the economy to grow as well. But your sitting president, if it doesn't benefit him, he wants nothing to do with it. And all presidents know, all of them, from Barack Obama, who's sitting in office now, to the presidents before him, to President Abraham Lincoln, all the presidents know that in order to get the economy moving, to get the economy growing in the direction it needs to, you have to create and develop jobs. You have to create and develop partnerships with companies that can bring in those resources that you need to move and get the country moving forward. But the sitting president in Uganda right now, if it does not benefit him in any way, he is not interested. And what I mean by benefiting him is corruption. He wants these companies to pay absorbent amounts of monies to be there, absorbent amounts of monies to do the things they want to do. They want to have their hands in everything that goes on. And these companies are like, well, this isn't benefiting us. And we're trying to do something to benefit and help the people of Uganda, but its government doesn't want that for its people. Abraham Lincoln knew that freeing the slaves would build and strengthen the nation, the government, and the economy. Your president knows that all of the opportunities that have been put on the table for Uganda to move forward would do the same thing for that country, but your president continues to turn his head and look the other way. And in 2016, he wants you to vote him back in office again. Why would you vote someone back in office again who has not cared and looked out for your best interests at this point? If you're starving and you're hungry today, you will be starving and you will be hungry in 2016 as well. Because this president, when he gets what he wants, he will turn idly away and he will have nothing to do with you as he always has. You can't ask for the attention of the people in order to get what you want, and you ignore them the rest of the time as if they're not even common citizens of this great country, which, by the way, has the potential of being great if in the right hands of a person who's willing not only to move the government forward, but to move the people of Uganda forward. Because it's not just about the government moving forward. It's about the people moving forward. This is something that Abraham Lincoln knew too well with freeing the slaves. He knew that this would be something that would be good for the country and would be good for the government. And it's interesting, when you look back on a lot of the great iconic leaders, most of them came from very, very humble surroundings and very, very humble situations, because Abraham Lincoln grew up very, very, very poor. Very poor. He educated himself. And these are people that you can relate to because you can understand their perspective of where they're at because of where you're at. I mean, let's not go way up the road in history when we're looking at a lot of these iconic leaders. Let's look at them in the humbleness of where they started. Because I need you to fall in love with them from where they started, not from where they ended up at. And sometimes in history, we get so caught up in what they did and how they moved a country forward that we forget the humbleness of where they started. This was a very, very poor man who didn't have running water, didn't have electricity in his house, and had to educate himself. Ugandans, you may not have the things that you need, and some of you may not be able to go to school because there's no funding and there's no money for you to go to school. But who is not to say that you cannot educate yourself? If you know other kids that are going to school, ask them to let you read some of their books. Ask them to read some of those books to you. You would be amazed at how much help is around you to help you motivate and get yourself going in the right direction. But sometimes we're so intimidated by those who are considered higher than us that we don't feel that we can approach them. And to those in Uganda and around the world who are hearing my voice, if you have loved ones, if you have family members that you are educating in Uganda, encourage those children to go and set up a reading workshop with other children. Teach other children words, teach other children things. I mean, because we know that everyone is not going to be able to go to school and get educated. But does that mean that they don't need to have a basicness of educating themselves or helping one another? If we cannot get the Ugandan society to reach back and start helping each other, you're never going to be able to move forward, even if the government changes hands. You're not going to be able to move forward because that selfishness, that self-centered, the pride, we have to lose it. And we have to look at these other children as being equal to who we are as well. And we have to extend ourselves out to them. If you know that you have something that you can offer to a child whose family can't educate them or can't do anything for them, then you need to do that. because we have to move together. We have to move forward as a unit, as a oneness. Otherwise, we all fall apart. We all fall destined to what can happen to the country as a whole. Find ways in which you can be a blessing in the lives of other people. Teach their children, help their children to learn to read. Teach them basic little things that they need to know so that they can continue to move forward as the country starts to move forward. No one should be left behind, and no one should feel inadequate in a country that everyone is fighting for the same equal liberties and equal rights and equal justices. Because those young children may be brighter than you think they are, and they may know more than you think that they know. But until we start to reach back and help people, that's what Harriet Tubman did. Harriet Tubman, when she made it out to freedom, she didn't forget about all the people that were not in freedom. She went back to help those people. When Rosa Parks was arrested on the bus for not giving up her seat, all of the African American community rallied behind her to say that this is an injustice, this is not right, and what are we going to do about it? I know that there's a lot of division and a lot of areas in Uganda where people are, you have a lot of tribal things that still happen there in the country. But in order to move the country forward, somehow, somewhere, we have to start uniting, whether it be with the youth that seem to be more into that because they party and they hang out at the beaches and they do things more together. Wherever it starts, it needs to start. Because Harriet Tubman would not be where she's at today, if it were not for those who united with her and helped. Nor would Rosa Parks, nor would President Abraham Lincoln have been able to do what he was able to do if he didn't have a group of people that rallied behind him to help him move this forward. Meaning the war. The war was set up, and that was their reason to move forward, because they had a common ground that they stood on. The same thing needs to happen there in Uganda. I talked early on in my show about a line being drawn in the sand. Very, very early on when we first started the program. That line being drawn in the sand, and people thinking that they have to stand behind that line. They're not allowed to cross over that line into someone else's house, someone else's territory, someone else's church, someone else's, whatever it may be that line is drawn there in the sand for. And we've got to stop doing that, and we have to allow ourselves to move about the country as one, standing side by side, fighting for your rights. Interestingly enough, when in 1809 all the way to 1865, when President Lincoln was fighting for the freedom of slavery, Harriet Tubman was running back and forth in slavery country, pulling slaves out of these slaved areas. So we're not just looking at one man doing one thing. We're looking at even other things happening in the background. Harriet Tubman didn't just sit back and say, oh, Abraham Lincoln is fighting for the freedom of slaves, so I'm just going to sit back and wait until he's done with the Civil War, and then we'll see if we're free. I'm telling you, my friends, even those of you Ugandans that are outside of the country, when we talk about pledging and giving money to this program for the things that we're trying to fund and the things that we're trying to move forward and the things that we're trying to get going, if Harriet would have sat aside and just waited on Abraham Lincoln to see what was going to happen, look at the 300 people that she brought out into freedom in the course of this war going on. And not only was she running back and forth in slave states, helping people to freedom, she was also helping Abraham Lincoln's soldiers, because they were thinking, how is this woman getting in and out of these territories and not getting caught? She knew all the side roads, she knew all the back roads, she knew all the swamp areas, she knew how to maneuver her way through those territories. So not only was she benefiting slaves by bringing them out into free areas, but she was also helping with the efforts in the war, because they would show her maps and she could tell them where she had seen soldiers at, how they could get around areas and territories so that they could sneak up on the enemies and kill them, because her she was just as interested in abolishing slavery as Abraham Lincoln was. And anything that she could do to help, she was doing that to help. We've got to stop thinking that only a group of people are going to do something and we need to leave it to them to do it. My fellow Ugandans, you have to get on board and you have to contribute to this radio program for the fundings that are needed to do the things that we need to do, not only here, but over in Uganda as well. You cannot say, oh, well, they've started up a radio station, and so we'll leave it to them, and we'll see what happens. We'll see what the outcome of all of this would be. It is not for any of us to sit back in our easy chairs and just relax at the work and the hands of others who are putting themselves out there weekly to get this information, to bring this information, to talk about things that we know politically can cause problems later on down the road. We all are responsible for the people in Uganda. We all are responsible for the well-being of those in Uganda. We're responsible for their education. We're responsible for their health and well-being. We're responsible for their nurturing and their and the things that they need. We cannot idly sit back and say, well, you know, I don't want to get involved because, or for whatever reason. This is not a time to say that you're not going to get involved. Freedom at hand is not here to simply say, don't worry, we're going to handle it and we're going to take care of it. We are like Harriet Tubman. We're saying, great, Abraham Lincoln, our president, is fighting for the freedom of slavery. So we'll sit back and allow him to do it. No, she kept putting her life in harm's way to free these people. Do you think she had fears? Of course she had fears. But can I honestly ask, what is it that we truly, truly are fearing? What is it that we're truly fearing? Because I have my fears. I'm sure other people who have their programs have their fears. I'm sure people who donate money and doing the things that they've been doing so far, and we thank those people who have come on board and start donating to the cause. I'm sure they have their fears too, but how long are we going to sit back and allow fear to control and dictate what we stand up and what we decide to do? This is not a time for us to sit back and to continue to allow fear to rule in our hearts and keep us from doing and standing with the people in Uganda. We cannot ask these people to stand alone. In a government that continues to tie their hands together, in a government that continues to torture them, a government that continues to beat them, and a government that continues to take away their rights. Their rights may be taken away, but your rights outside of the country, and those of you that are in exile, your rights are not taken away. We're not asking you to fly into Uganda and take pictures and get things out and get those things to us. But what we are asking you to do is to support what is happening here at this radio station to continue to move us forward. Last week, I talked a little about the NAACP and what that does and why that was set up and why that was established as an hello?
We have a call.
Okay, we have a call. I'm going to go ahead and take this call, and then I'll come back on the topic that we were just discussing. Caller, are you there? Hello, caller, are you there? Go ahead.
Are you there?
Caller, are you there? Okay. I guess we're having problems with that one coming through. You can continue to try to see if we can get him on the air. I talked about the NAACP because it's an iconic figure of where people can congregate to and where people can go to hear their voice and have their voices heard. So whenever anything was happening in our society as African Americans, the NAACP would come in and would be that voice that we needed the world to hear. So the world and the media was not going to all these different places trying to get answers for what was going on, they could come directly to the NAACP and find out, what was going on or what the people were thinking or what their views were or how we were going to move forward. That's the same thing that we've done with the new program that's being set up for do. It's the exact same thing. It's to give a voice to the Ugandan people, a place where someone can come and contact us on behalf of the Ugandan people so that we can say, this is what's going on, this is what's not going on, this is what should be going on, this is how we're trying to help the people, and we could be that voice. A very, very powerful voice at a time where things are going to get chaotic. They're going to get worse before they get better. And we want to be that voice. So that is all a part of the working together that I'm talking about. And I want to see the Ugandan people get away from their fear. We have got to stand behind the brothers and sisters who are still there in Uganda who are being treated the way that they're being treated. If any of these leaders and these iconic figures, these civil rights movement people who, if they touch your heart in any way as to what they have done to liberate and to move their people and their countries forward, that is the reason for this program. It's to help all of us understand and know our position and where we are and where we need to stand as far as standing behind each other and standing behind one another. Harriet Tubman was a great resource for Abraham Lincoln in helping, with the war efforts, in helping to still continue to free slaves. She didn't just sit back and wait for somebody else to do it. And when I talked about her, I talked about the fact that she worked. Is our caller back now? Hey, caller, are you there?
Hello, Miss Brenda. Can you hear me?
Dorothy, I can. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you.
Well, I would like to thank you very much for everything you are doing for our beloved country, Uganda. Thank you very much. And I would also like to thank our listeners whenever they are. That we really appreciate for them being there, listening. And I want to take this opportunity to call on them to call and give us some suggestions and what they know. Miss Brenda, it is a part question and it is a part comment. You talked about, because I think it is high time the Ugandan people to look very closely at everything. So, yes, President Museveni, he has done terrible things to our beloved country, Uganda. And as we also know, there is a lot of people he's working with because he himself alone, he cannot accomplish everything the way he has done. We know very well that there are so many foreign people, like people from Rwanda, because basically President Kagame in Rwanda and Museveni is like they say, the same person. Kagame is in control of Uganda, Museveni is in control of Uganda. The same thing for Congo too. Of course, the same people are in control of Rwanda and Burundi, okay? Now, for the case of Uganda, we know for sure there are so many foreigners who are carrying on President Museveni's work, okay? People from Rwanda, Burundi, Sudan, you name it, even in Congo, okay? Now, because there are those Tutsis in Congo. And we also know, when we talk about these soldiers who come and really shoot people, and the president gives them orders, shoot, and after you shoot, leave those bodies in the streets for a long time for people to look at. Okay? Because people who are trying to remove these bodies are tear gassed. So that people look at those bodies in the streets for a long time so they know when they try next time what might happen to them. So surely those are not Ugandan soldiers. Those are not boys and girls born in Uganda. They are not. We need to know that. Of course, we know there are people helping him, okay? And in civil positions, too, there is a lot of foreigners who have helped President Museveni to do or accomplish his plans. Ms. Brenda, you mentioned about feeling sorry for the member of parliament in Uganda for not having an opportunity to do what they went to do in parliament. First of all, we know that Uganda is one of the poorest countries in the world, and we depend on foreign aid. But we also know that Uganda is one of the countries in the world who have the most high number of MPs and other, civil positions in the whole world. The member of parliament we have in Uganda, United States doesn't, they don't have such numbers. And we also know that Uganda is one of the most poorest countries in the world, but the Ugandan MPs are one of the most highly paid MPs in Uganda. Okay? Now, as they have learned over the years that President Museveni has been passing one bill after another, these MPs go in the parliament, okay? So they know that people voted for them to go represent them and their needs. And for sure they know that the playground they are playing in, okay? So my question is, we cannot do our job anymore. The same thing goes to the opposition. The past two elections, the Ugandan people have requested the MPs not to go ahead with the elections. Let Museveni compete with himself. So for me, when you talk about selfishness, these people are selfish. When you talk about President Abraham Lincoln, these are people who have a caring heart. Okay? When something is wrong, you just have to know that it's wrong. Because these MPs, it is the same Museveni who pays them. Do they go there for money, or do they go there to represent the people of Uganda? So, Ms. Brenda, what kind of advice would you give to these MPs? Okay? Because for me, I think they need to walk out of parliament and say enough is enough. We are not doing anything here.
Exactly.
Stay online, please.
Okay, we have
Thank you.
another call. Thank you so much, Dorothy, and we'll address that in just a second. We have one more call coming through. Go ahead, caller. Are you there?
Yes, I'm here. Hello.
Hi. Is this Kenneth?
Yes.
Kenneth, I was talking about you earlier. For those of you in my listening audience today, Kenneth was the young man that I was talking about earlier in the show that was a part of the video and was a part of the show last week. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good. So did you hear what our caller was just talking about as far as the police there and the elections and how the force is so prominent there when anything has to be passed in the government?
No, I had just recently joined the line.
Oh, okay. Well, let me just talk about this for a few minutes and stay on with me. I want to hear your comments on this. I understand what Dorothy is saying. No election should have the military show up for the election. When we go to vote here in the United States of America, our president does not send out the police and he does not send out the military as a threat to us as to what we should or shouldn't be doing, or a threat that we won't even show up and vote because we're afraid of being killed in the streets. It's true that a country as poor as Uganda, in the videos, when you start to watch the memorial video, the MP is dressed so immaculately. They are dressed as nicely as the military and the police here in the United States of America. And the military, of course, they're making a lot of money. Their pays are very, very high. And I don't understand. I think that goes to show that the sitting president is putting money in what keeps him elected, not not in what runs the country. And until you have military police officers who are willing to step down and say, I will not kill my fellow Ugandans, and I will not be a part of the corruption will continue, and the president will continue to have the power in that way. But for him to say that he's winning elections by 70%, when you have your military show up in force on election day, that doesn't sound like anything in a fairness to me, and it doesn't sound like anything in a way a government should be run. Kenneth, how do you feel about that as far as that goes here in the United States?
I believe, first of all, that's unjust and unlawful. But I do have one question. What does happen to the 30% who don't vote for him?
Well, that's a good question, and I don't know that, because we already know that people lose their lives when at times of elections, that people die, people come up missing, or people flee and leave the country simply because they do or do not agree or disagree with what's going on, because we already know that you can't disagree with what's going on in the government. We already know what happens to Parliament, like the caller just said. The police officers, the army men, show up at night at these officials' homes, and as a threat to let them know that they're going to vote one way or another, or they can lose their lives right there. So you're not giving the people the freedom of choice to make the decisions that need to be made on the behalf of the country. Yet you're saying that you are, and you're sending force out to mandate this, to control this, to make sure that these things happen.
Yes, definitely. I don't if you're winning by 70% force, he hasn't actually won the people's vote. It's just sheer fear. And
okay, so let's go a little farther, because in any election, in any country that you've heard of, have you ever heard of anyone winning an election by that big of a margin?
Adolf Hitler won like that.
Well, we know why Adolf Hitler won like that, so maybe we should compare him to Adolf Hitler then.
It's the exact same way Adolf Hitler won. He assassinated other political parties and forced his way into power.
Which this sounds a little bit kind of like that, if I'm not mistaken.
Sounds almost exactly the same.
Right. So the bill that's just been passed, where no one's allowed to gather three or more to talk about anything political, this bill that has just been passed, this bill passed in about a week and a half to maybe 2 weeks. How long does it normally take for a bill to pass in the United States? If a bill comes up before Congress, how long do you think it would take a bill to pass here?
A couple of months. Some of them drag on for years.
Exactly. So if you're looking at this as an American, and you're seeing that this has taken place in such a short amount of time, that doesn't sound like it went through the debate issue. It doesn't sound like it was taken to the floor for discussion. And we're talking about the rights of people. We're talking about changing the Constitution of the Republic of Uganda. If you're going to bring a bill before the office here in America, and it's going to change the Constitution of the United States of America, do you think it would be passed in 2 weeks?
No, I don't believe that there was anyone to oppose the bill for threat of death.
Mm-hmm. Well, exactly. And that's what we're talking about here when we're talking about Abraham Lincoln and his fight to abolish slavery. Even in everything that Abraham Lincoln wanted to do to abolish and free slavery, nothing was done quickly. Nothing was done fast. There was a war. There was a war that took place in order for these things to happen. I think that there is a time and a place where our military needs to be used to bring about force, but I don't think the military needs to be used in force like it is in Uganda to sway votes, to sway people in parliament to do things the way the government wants those things done, or to kill innocent people who may or may not show up to vote simply because that they feel like their life would be threatened.
Military force should only use at an extent to foreign invaders, not on home grounds, especially not on its citizens.
Well, exactly, because if you're here in America and the military uses force to keep you away from, say, school or from voting, would you feel like your civil liberties and rights have been taken away?
Yes, most definitely. If you can't go out of your house without fearing to be shot down or arrested or doused in tear gas, then there's a problem.
Well, exactly. And this is a problem we're having with the Ugandan people. Standing as one is very, very important. Most of when I think about people like Dr. Martin Luther King, who I have not done my freedom at hand on yet, but when I think about the massiveness of all the things that had to come together for that standing as one against a government that during the time when they were doing those marches, they were tear gas. There were dogs. They would let the dogs go on people. They would open up water hose on these people and whatever. But they really never shot and killed these people, though, did they?
No, but they did burn down his house.
Well, they did burn down his house. And Uganda has a lot of that going on right now anyway with the burning of things that shouldn't be burned. But the fact still remains that they still took in consideration the lives of the people. They didn't just gun them down in the streets.
In Uganda, they take military force to an extreme extent, that didn't need to be pushed. They were literally dousing people in tear gas as if they had just dived into it.
Well, right. And
Hello?
Hold on.
Okay.
in that way, we're going to have problems.
Hello?
Hi, are you there?
Yeah, the signal went out for a second. Could you repeat yourself kindly?
I was just saying that, if we don't get the military to start having emotional feelings about the people that they're torturing, we're going to start to have problems because they're so disconnected from the emotions of what these people are feeling that they don't care what they're doing to these people. One of my callers earlier, Dorothy, was just saying that a lot of the military people that are causing the harm, that are causing the problems, are not even Ugandans. They're from other areas, from the Congo, from Sudan, and Rwanda, that are coming in and are causing some of this heartache and this torture as well. So until we can get the people to start standing together, uniting together, getting over the fear and the frustrations of what this caused, I think they're going to have a problem until we can get over the fear of it.
Part of the reason why the soldiers don't feel any emotional trauma to gunning these people down is because from a very young age, they were taught to do this. Bear in mind, most of the soldiers are orphans that were taken in to be taken in as soldiers from about 13.
And could anything like that possibly ever happen here in the United States of America or any other country that you would know of?
No, you have to be 18 to serve in the military, I believe.
You have to be 18 to serve in the military here. And who in their right mind would think that they could take a child and teach this child such horrific things and expect this child to be a normal, grow up to be a normal human being?
Because they've just been taught that this is okay. They can do it because they have the power and the weaponry.
So this is what I'm saying to the Ugandan people here today on Voice of Uganda Radio. These type of things are going to happen, and sometimes we're not going to have total control over it or be able to do or defend ourselves. But what we can do is get over the fear of what's going on, get the pictures out, get the things out that we can see what's going on so that the world can stand behind you and help you. Because from talking here with Kenneth, from Dorothy, who just called in a little while ago, the horrificness of what's going on with no sense of caring for another individual's life, these things are not going to stop. And if we allow the government to silence you, if the government silences you, we will never ever be able to fight. So the fight has to come from the outside inward, so that we can allow the world to know what's going on and how we can be a part of the solution to this problem, not sitting trying to figure out how we can make this different. Because children who are reared at a young age to kill massively like this, men who are living in the bush and given drugs and drinking and women and all the things that they're given to live these type of lives, to do the things, the torture and the things that they're doing, they're never going to stop. They're not going to stop unless we get the world on board. And I think Dorothy was asking that question earlier when she was talking about what can we do, or what can we say to the military men. I believe that some of them probably have a heart to step down from what they're doing, but I believe that there's some that don't have the heart to step down, like the caller now was saying, Kenneth, because they've been introduced to it at such a young age. But I think this is why I don't want the Ugandan people to be quiet about what's going on. I want them to get us pictures, let us upload them on our Facebook page, and upload them on these memorial videos so that we can go forward from there.
We have other
Do we have another caller?
Oh.
Yes.
Go ahead, caller.
Hello. Yeah. Brenda, thank you for the program.
Oh, you're welcome.
This is Mubiru Musoke.
Hey.
I'm glad you chose Abraham Lincoln as your topic today, because a lot of people may not be familiar with Abraham Lincoln, but he is a very, very important person, as far as I know, in the concept of democracy itself. First of all, I admire Abraham Lincoln for two qualities. He had two qualities I really, really admire. One was honesty. For a politician to be honest, that's a rare occasion. And the second one was courage. He was a very courageous guy. He couldn't have done what he did without a lot of courage. It took a lot of courage in the 1860s to talk about abolishing slavery. And I think even his friends, some of them sneered at him. A lot of cartoons were drawn of him, mocking him, but he stood steadfast, and he did accomplish the project of liberating the slaves. And so he's one of my admired politicians. The second reason is because Abraham Lincoln gave us what I call the immortal definition of democracy as government of the people, by the people, and for the people. I don't think you can get more precise in defining democracy than that. And so that definition definitely, a lot of people may not understand the full implications, and some of them are the NRM people, because NRM people, they used that definition of democracy when they were in the bush to attract support, and they even put it in their 10-point program. But of course, it was a hoax. They never meant government of the people, by the people, for the people. Now we know. We didn't know then at that time, but now we know that they never meant that. They never understood what Lincoln was talking about. And on the two qualities of Abraham Lincoln, the honesty and the courage, the courage is very important, because because when you look in history, people like Hitler, going to war is not proof that one is courageous. Hitler went to war, but he was a coward. Hitler committed suicide when he knew one that he had lost the war and he had nowhere else to turn. To me, that is an indication that he was a coward. The other cowards who went to war is like Idi Amin. Amin could be vocal, could sound as if he's very courageous, as long as he had his state research bureau and hunting down people and killing his enemies. But as soon as he was, surrounded by the forces from Tanzania, he just took off in a plane to Libya. And the same thing is true with Obote. He had no courage. The guy, he died in South Africa, but he was living in Zambia because he could not dare return to Uganda when Museveni was still in power. So that to me proves that he had no courage. Ironically, the same with Museveni. Museveni may appear to be as if he's a person with courage. If you have courage, you don't threaten innocent people. You don't kill helpless people.
And let me ask you this real quick while you're on that topic. Because it's very interesting to me that you just said that. I said that early in the program. I think what's going on now with having to pass this bill and putting the force on the military to do the things they're doing, it shows a sense of cowardness because the people are starting to stand against him, and I think he's threatened by it. Don't you feel that?
Oh, exactly. Good for the country. That's why I'm the leader of Uganda, and I want Uganda to continue on this line. That's why he is passing all these laws to prevent people from opposing him and coming and exposing his weaknesses and showing his true character and who he is. Definitely, you are right. That shows, all these, however, are desperate attempts to hide his true character. And I think in the end, anyway, he will lose. So I want to thank you for, bringing out Abraham Lincoln, because for me, a guy who can give you a precise but shortest definition of a complex subject like democracy, government of the people, by the people, for the people. He was an intellectual to that extent, and
And I tell you what, I just to elaborate on that a little more, one of the reasons I chose Abraham Lincoln today is because of all of the things that the sitting president in Uganda is doing right now. And you're right, it speaks of no courage and of no honesty. I mean, he runs and he tells the people one thing, but he lives and he does something totally opposite, which you just can't make sense out of what it is he even wants for himself out of all of the things that he's doing.
Exactly, because he has no principle, as I said. A person with a principle cannot contradict themselves and keep on, because he changes every day. He depends on what suits his temperament and interests at a particular day. That's what he goes by. But right now, what he's thinking about is how does he continue to be president of Uganda. That's all he's interested in. He's not interested in making Uganda, a good place to live, people to fight, for example, to fight poverty and all that. And he's very corrupt. I mean, for a man I've mentioned this before. For a man who waged war in the bush to fight a regime saying they rigged elections, and he himself has rigged every election he has held, that shows you what type of a person he is. He has no principle. So anybody who trusts him or believes in what he says, they are wasting their time. And I guess I've said enough about him. I'll let
No,
you
but it's
continue.
true. I think it's true what you're saying, because I think he's hiding behind the military, and I think one of his fears, like you were saying, he's a coward. I think one of the fears that he has is that the people no longer want him in office anymore. And now he's having to deal with his own emotions and his own feelings about what do I do and how do I keep this power, because the people don't want me here anymore.
Oh, yeah, and he's most scared of the consequences, of course, because he knows if he loses the election, either he's going to be put on trial or somehow he will have to run, and live in exile. I think those are some of the only alternatives he has. Either he keeps the power, and or he loses and he's out of luck. Thank you.
Thank you so much for your call.
Yeah.
Kenneth, before you get off the line, are you still there?
Yeah.
What did you think? What did you feel about the call that just came in?
I believe he was very right. It takes courage to be a leader, and if he was a true leader, he wouldn't have to use that method of force to win elections. If the people wanted to follow him, they would follow him.
Mm-hmm. And the people deserve the right to have the vote.
They deserve the right to choose their own leader. But clearly, court elections are rigged, court cases are acquitted, officials are threatened. That's a corrupted government.
Yeah, which is not for the people and by the people in any means.
People don't have an actual say, because the way I see it, he's treating the people as expendables. Like if he shoots them down, like this more will just be there.
Yeah, I find it interesting too, and I knew the story of Hitler. When he was close to being captured himself, that he killed himself, and it left me with such an interesting feeling, because I was thinking of all the power that this man had, all of the people that he stood over, all the horrific things he did. His military was in control of doing so many things, and that ending just never was a good ending for me. I just felt like more than that should have happened to him than him being able to take his own life.
And the thing about Hitler was he didn't take down countries that were first world like Germany or Russia. He attacked third world countries that didn't have any real defense and stationed his troops there.
Yeah, and they didn't have a choice of what was happening, which is really what we're talking about today, and what's happening there to the Ugandan people is that everything is with force. He's moving in on people who are innocent and have no way of fighting back. And that's how he's gaining his control, by putting fear in those smaller areas. That's the reason we have Voice of Uganda Radio, is because we tell people to spread the word, because we want those people in those small areas to know that everybody's fighting. You're not the only ones that the government's trying to suppress and keep from rising against them. The country is rising up. And we need everybody to know not to sit back in fear, but to continue to do the things you're doing, because everyone is starting to fight back.
And it's such a shame, because American politicians are taking this very lightly. Like you said it yourself, Senator Coons commended the Ugandan military for Anti-Terrorism Act. A terrorist is someone who needlessly harms innocents.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, we're going to work on Senator Coons a little bit. He's put himself out there on the platform, so we need to make him accountable for some of the things that he feels should and shouldn't be done, and how he feels about the erosion and the corruption that's happening there in the country. Thank you so much, Kenneth, for calling in and being a part of the show today. I appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. Stay strong, Uganda.
That was one of our American guests that was on the show with me last week. This week coming up, Brittany Ferguson is a young lady who is in her mid-20s also, that's going to be talking and going to be a part of the conversation here that's happening. He's right. Stay strong. Stay encouraged. I think one of the things that I want those in Uganda to know, that I think sometimes because the area is so big and so vast and everybody doesn't know where everybody is and what's going on, and I want them to know that everybody's staying united, everybody's standing strong, and everybody's fighting this. Because like the caller just said, intimidation, if you start to intimidate this president and start to make him nervous and start to give him reason to doubt himself, he will second guess himself and second guess some of the things that he's doing. And you guys are in a position now where you have him on the run and you're making him question himself, his leadership abilities, and everything about himself that he has held very strongly and very firmly by up until this point. But because what is the struggle all about? The struggle when Abraham Lincoln was president and fighting for slavery, for freedom, that's what the struggle was about. Everybody knew what the struggle was and what we were fighting for. And either you were on board or you weren't on board. But everybody knew what was going on. The sitting president there in Uganda is causing so much chaos and so much insecurity, and because of his own insecurities in his military and in his parliament, that nobody knows, like the caller said, what he's doing from one day to the next. All he knows is what suit he's putting on and what he has to show up for that day for. But as far as an agenda of really leading the people forward, I think he's just continuing to try to have control, that he himself knows that slowly he's losing that control. And I encourage the Ugandan people not to give him that control back, because the struggle is real in that country, and you have every right to protest and every right to fight it at this time. It's interesting how we celebrate those who've made the history books. We celebrate them and we look at their lives and we think of their courage and we think of their strength and we think of what they brought, to history. But what we really have to celebrate is the innocence in which they started their fight. They were not these big iconic people. They were small people like you and me. But they had a vision, they had a dream, they knew that things had to be different, and they stood up for that and they fought for that. And Abraham Lincoln was victorious. He was victorious in actually freeing the states and freeing slavery. Of course, because of that, he lost his life. He was elected. A lot of the people didn't want to re-elect him because of the anger of freeing the slaves and all of the turmoil that caused. But he got in there and he was able to make his opinions known and to continue to stand firm on what he believed when he did that. And he was re-elected. Unfortunately, he was assassinated before he could go into his second term. But, like the caller said, he had courage and he was honest. That's why they called him Honest Abe. That was his nickname, Honest Abe. He did not fabricate the truth of what it was he wanted or what it was he was doing or what it was he was fighting for. He stayed true to his cause of freeing the slaves. He didn't know what would happen when the slaves were freed. He didn't know how their lives would change or what would happen to them. But he knew that at the point in time, in the situation that they were in, something had to change. And I think that's where we're at with Uganda. We know that in the situation that they're in right now, it is not good for them and nothing's going to change. And if we continue to allow the abuse and the cruelty and the things that are happening to them, the society will continue to do that to them. Because let me tell you one of the things about slavery. There were people who would have lost their lives to keep slavery. They did because of the war. But they did not want blacks to be free at all. They wanted to continue to keep us where we were at in the lives that we had, and they wanted to continue to have dictatorship over us, tell us what to do, who we could marry, where we could live and how we could live our lives. And if there had been none of these heroic people that stood up for that, slavery could still be in place today. It could still be in place today. So what's going on in Uganda, I want the Ugandans to know that this is not the rest of your life, and this is not your life. We have all been suppressed. We've all come through hardship and heartache. We have all come through difficult times where we needed to grow to the next level. We've all been there, and you're there now. But what we're trying to say is it's not going to be this way forever. And we have to start to make your voices heard. We have to start to put you out there on a platform that other Americans can see, other Americans can compliment on, and other Americans can start to stand up for you and the rights of Ugandans. I'm thankful for Kenneth for calling in on this show today. I'm thankful for Brittany, who will be on Freedom at Hand next week, talking about some of the same topics. And it's important for me to introduce other Americans on this show as guests, because I don't want the Ugandans to think that they're in this struggle and they're in this fight alone. But just like Abraham Lincoln fought for the freedom of slavery, so did Harriet Tubman. She continued her fight as well. She didn't just allow him to sit back and do his part. She still participated and did her part. So we all have a part to play in this. We all have a hand in this. And just like Dorothy was saying earlier with the MPs there in Uganda, stop torturing and killing your brothers and your sisters. Start standing up for the rights of other Ugandans. If you start standing together, you would be amazed at how many people are ready to stand with you. Sometimes we think we're in the fight by ourselves. Something we have to do is stand up in that leadership position and say to be done to free the slaves. Harriet Tubman stood in her grounds, and she knew that she needed to do what she needed to do to continue to free the slaves. And as she went in to get slaves, she was amazed at the courage of the other slaves, that they were ready to come forward, that they were ready to step forward and say, we don't want to be treated like this anymore. We're ready to get out of here. We're ready to risk our lives to be free. The same thing happened with Rosa Parks. The day she decided not to stand up on that bus, she could have come against police officers that were cruel and didn't care, and they could have clubbed her, they could have hurt her, or they could have done serious damage to her. But she stood up in her courage on that day, and she had lived a life of a lot of, she had come up in a time where there were colored bathrooms, there were colored water fountains. A colored person could order food, but then they had to go to the back door to pick it up. I mean, what is that? You're paying the same amount of money as a white to eat in a restaurant, yet you could pay for your food. You had to stand outside, and when your food was ready, you went to the back to pick it up. So there are just a lot of injustices that have happened throughout the world. And all of these people had to stand up and find that courage within them. All of them. Steve Biko, we talked about him. He was 10 years old when Nelson Mandela was taken to Robben Island for life imprisonment. But he did not allow that to stop him. He could have said, oh my gosh, they're beating them in prison, they're torturing them, they put them in these work camps, they're going to be there for the rest of their lives. I'm not going to do that. He took a chance and stood in his courage as well. He lost his life. We know the story of that, but he stood in his courage, and he continued to motivate and spark what needed to continue to keep the South Africans moving forward. So, sometimes we look at what's going on with other people and we think, well, they're doing something, so I'll just sit out here and wait and see what happens. But that's not what we need to do, my friends. If you've got a voice, make your voice heard. Find out how many people are thinking in the same way that you're thinking. Find out how you can form groups and form them privately. You don't have to be out in public to make your points. You can do a lot of what you need to do in private. You can still meet, you can still congregate, you can still figure things out, you can continue the movement and continue to move forward. But what I beg of you is don't allow this government to silence your voice, because if they silence you now, you will be silenced forever. And if they silence you, they will continue to do the things that they're doing at a higher degree. Hitler became worse as time went on because his power became greater and greater and greater. And as he saw his power become greater and greater and greater, no one could stop him. He became a monster. Right now, we may think the sitting president is a monster because we see him in some of these videos standing over dead bodies. But what you will continue to create will be worse than what you live in today. And so my encouragement to the Ugandan people is to continue to stand up for your rights, to continue to stand up for your freedoms, continue to make your voice heard, keep yourself safe, find areas where you can meet and congregate, where the police and the government doesn't need to know where you're at, and trust in one another. Do not turn your sisters and brothers in for any reason, for any reason. You're going to have to stand strong. You're going to have to stand firm, and you're going to have to trust in the fact that there are a lot of groups of people all over Uganda that are fighting for the same cause. You may not know who those other groups and who those other people are, but I want you to know that you're not alone, and you never stand alone. And here in America, we will do everything that we can, not just for our listeners here in the United States, but our listeners around the world, to give a voice to what's going on and what people are doing. And I do encourage you. I know a lot of times some of the information, sometimes I have a lot of information and people may not want to call in and be a part of the conversation, but I encourage you to be a part of the conversation, because what Abraham Lincoln did to free the slaves and to free African Americans here in the United States of America came the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution. And the 13th Amendment is the freedom of the emancipation. It freed slaves and freed us into a life that we still had to struggle. We still had to move forward. We still had to learn our way, but we were given the chance to do that. And I think that that's all the Ugandan people are asking as well. Like the slave, the slave soldier said to Abraham Lincoln, "What will happen to us when we get our freedom?" And he said, "I don't know. But anything is better than what you have now." And this is what we're saying for the Ugandan people too. We don't know what will happen when all of this turns about, but anything is better than the situation that you're in now. The Americans have the 13th Amendment to the United States Constitution that we read with pride. That is the amendment that set us free and set us on a course to growing, changing, and maturing, and becoming the people that we are today. And it's all because someone stood up for the rights of those that he knew deserved the rights in their own country. We served in the military. We worked the fields. We did everything that everyone else did. We just weren't considered as citizens, and we had absolutely no rights. In the 1800s, and here in Uganda in 2013, your lives are no better than our lives were in 1809 and all the way up to 1865. You know, we've got to fight for those rights. We've got to fight to put you guys in a position to move forward with the rest of the world. I encourage our listeners to participate by being a part of donating to the cause. That will greatly be appreciated and will greatly go very, very far in helping with making our voices heard on even a bigger scope and on a bigger scale. And when we do put it out there that video, the memorial video starts to run, I encourage you to go out there and go to YouTube. It's going to be on our website, on the FADUB website, but I encourage you to go to YouTube. Pull it up there. Let's make it go viral. Let's make it go viral in the worst kind of way. And let's give it the attention that it deserves, so that the Ugandan people, because we know social media there in Uganda, and we know that they will know that they have a voice, and their voice is being heard loud and clear, and their voice is being heard loud and clear outside of the country. So I thank you all so very, very much. My American audience, my audience here in the United States and around the world, I thank you so much for being a part of Freedom at Hand today, where our discussion was Abraham Lincoln and just his fight for the American people and what a president should be for its people. We understand from what we see from Abraham Lincoln and his love to move a country forward and move a people forward. We can't say that same rights for the president that's sitting in Uganda right now. He's taken away those rights from the people instead of encouraging and moving those people forward in their rights. So I thank you so much for being a part of the program today, Freedom at Hand. As always, I am your host, Miss Brenda, saying thank you so much for being a part of the program today. God bless you, and we will talk to you on Wednesday when we meet up with you again for 2 hours of the American Connection. Till then, God bless and have a great rest of the day.